Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Live, Love, and Marry Wiser. I'm your host, Lorraine Edwards, with my co-host, Renee Warren. Hey, Renee, how you doing?
Hey, I'm great as always.
We are happy to welcome you to another episode where our mission is in our name. You know, in Proverbs 4:7, the Bible says wisdom is the principal thing. And so therefore get wisdom. But with all your getting, get understanding. And when we plan out these episodes, we pray, we plan, we prepare for you to access wisdom. And we hope that we have been doing that for you all in the last 38 episodes. This is episode 39. And if you haven't seen all of them, you should go binge watch. I heard that I talked to someone last week and she said she had to work like all night and she was binge watching the episodes and loved it. So I was happy to hear that. So we are, as you can see, we have just myself and Renee here today, but we have a special guest that will be joining us shortly. But before we do that, you know what time it is. It is book commercial, book trailer, book launch time. Are you ready for that? In a world filled with challenges, one book empowers women to become warriors of prayer. Pray It Forward for women who choose to fight on their knees. Dive into the transformative journey of prayer, fasting, and praise. Join a sisterhood of prayer warriors and discover the power that comes when you fight on your knees. So excited. So again, if you'd like to be a part of the book launch team, email us at support@asinglemission.com. Well, as you might have noticed, if you've heard, you saw this last week, we originally were publishing on December 3rd because that was my birthday. But because we made some significant adjustments to the manuscript, it just got to the editor like this week, Friday. And of course, it's Thanksgiving week, so that's going to be delayed. But it will be out in December. We're going to definitely do that. And so when we have a final date, we will let you know. But you get on the launch team now, you'll get a copy in advance. And so you can start diving into that. We'll give you more details about what's happening January 1st as what to the book, because we're excited about that. But let's get the book done first. So what time is it, Renee? I think it's time for some
updates, for the lowdown on the updates.
Lowdown on the updates. Okay, so if you've been watching, that means you know that I started my intentional dating journey about 3 weeks ago, I think, at this point. And I am keeping you updated on what is happening because I did a profile online. Right now, I've only done one site, but I am looking to probably add another, specifically Adventist. Someone suggested AdventistDating.com. So I'm going to check that out as well. But here's the update. So last week we talked about, I got one response I sent out 3 messages. I actually got 2 responses, but one was a response that was like, oh, that was so nice, but basically not interested. But the other guy, we've been kind of talking back and forth, not anything significant or deep, but the conversation has been maintained throughout this week. He sent me a couple of messages. He said it was nice to hear from me, that we are both in the helping fields, because I had mentioned that I am a social worker And he was saying that this sounds like a great time in my life, which it is a great time in my life. And then he asked me if I had a nickname. And the reason he asked me that is because he has one. I can't tell you what it is because we are obviously not going to reveal who this person is, and we don't want to put anyone out on YouTube if they haven't asked to be that way. But I do not have a nickname except, well, my Ebony calls me Lo, and my other friends who are co-hosts and otherwise, some call me L. But I said, when and if I got a husband, I'm sure he'll have a nickname for me. But right now, you can just call me Lorraine. So the conversation continues, and we'll see how it goes next week on Lowdown on the Updates. Well, this week, our episode is a little bit different, but I'm excited about this conversation with a friend who and a church member, a brother in Christ, who does a very, very important and interesting work right now. He's done a lot of interesting things in his life, but I'm excited to have him here. Our topic is beyond violence, and should abusers, we're talking about domestic violence today, should abusers get empathy or second chances? And a lot of people would say, no, if you hit me, that's it. Or if you hit anyone, then you should be locked up, and that should be, let's throw away the key. But we're going to have a conversation, and we're going to approach this from the perspective of the abuser. And Edgar's going to help us do it. So if you don't mind, welcome to the stage, Edgar Rodriguez. Hi, Edgar. You're muted.
Look at that. Look at that. I already started on the wrong side. But hello, ladies.
You're all good.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for the invite. I really appreciate it.
Oh, you are welcome. You're welcome, my friend. I'm excited about what you have to share today. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Hey, Susan. Susan is one of our biggest and best supporters, and we're always happy to have her here. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
I did, just in case I have the FBI, on the download, because I did share the link with my wife, so I don't know if she's on the download. So I gotta say that I am happily married. We've been married for
get it right now
16 years.
Oh, nice.
And I am also a grandpa. This beautiful guy that you see right here is a grandpa. So I did started my career. I'm currently ladies and gentlemen, I don't know, you all ladies, or there's gentlemen also?
There's sometimes gentlemen, but in the future there'll be a variety, so you can speak to everyone.
Okay. So I did started my career with the corrections, the federal corrections. I worked with them for 28 years. So I'm happily retired. Bless God. And I started as a young officer. Then I moved up in the ladder as a counselor. And then I actually transferred to the education department, where I used to test guys with the GED. We had a re-entry program. And that's when I started my passion for domestic violence, where I started to run groups in prison for parenting and violence. During that time, I started working with a nonprofit organization part-time in Connecticut. It's called Wheeler Clinic, where we actually run two programs. So we had the family violence program. Was a program, a 9-week program. Most of those ladies and gentlemen, and yes, I did say ladies, because you have ladies out there that they could punch like Mike Tyson.
Mm.
They could bring it down too. So we run two different programs, females and males.
Mm-hmm.
One 9-week program and one 26 week program. So the 9-week program was ladies and gentlemen that there was first offenders,
Okay.
and really they didn't had their charges were not very that bad. But we had the 26 program where we had guys that they were in and out from prison for violence and other also charges as well. Because once you break the charge, they could actually go back and bring you back to the program, even though it was not related, but because with your probation officer, you broke your probation, so they'll put you on a program, you know. Mhm.
Right. So how long have you been doing this, working with this organization?
Well, with Wheeler Clinic, I've been 7 years with Wheeler Clinic.
Mm-hmm.
It is a good program. From my perspective, I like your title that it says, should we give perpetrators a second chance?
Mm-hmm.
I always start my seminars or my classes giving this scenario, you know, and I compare relationships with the stock market, and they say, Edgar, are you crazy? How can you relate the stock market with relationship? And I say, suave, papi, suave, you know, take it easy. I'm gonna explain. And I say, in the stock market, you have to invest. Well, in relationships, also you have to invest.
Mm-hmm.
When you also invest in the stock market, sometimes the stock market goes up and goes down. Well, let me tell you something, amiga and amigo. In relationship, you also goes up and goes down.
Right.
And then there's a time in the stock market when you may see a crash, where you see your money, and you know people don't like you to mess around with their money,
Right.
and you may have to make a sound decision, or to leave it there, risk it,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe take it out.
Right.
Well, in relationship too, you may hit a rock where actually you're gonna have to make a decision, or you stay in the relationship or you stay out.
Mm-hmm.
But and then there's a thing in the stock market that just because you invest, it doesn't mean that you're gonna become a millionaire from a short time. You don't see your fruits, your investment into a long time.
Right.
Where in relationship, you also too. You don't see your investment into years to come. Now, me and my wife, sometimes we sit down and we say, "Hey, you remember when we were fighting about this and all that kind of stuff?" And we have our granddaughter, and we see the fruits. You know, we had our ups and downs, but we see our fruits.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not the qualified person to say, you know, you need to get out of the relationship, you need to stay. Um, there's a slang in the Puerto Rican culture that they say, nadie sabe el arroz cuando se mueve que la persona. In other words, nobody knows was in the pot than the person that is behind the pot that is moving it. So only you can make a sound decision if you give a second chance to the person. Is it worth it or is it not? But we will talk about that, the signs, because um in the lesson plan, I did share some topics of the lesson plan that I cover in Wheeler Clinic, and we also show our clients how to recognize the sign of domestic violence. So far, do I have any questions from um, the group? Because in my screen, I only see you, but I don't see the other
Yeah, she's
people.
having some challenges. There's some weather over where she is, and so she keeps losing her connection to the internet. So right now it's just me. And so I guess I will ask you the first question. And then if you're in the chat, please pop some questions in there. We would love to get some questions from you as well. Let's start with someone who is a first offender. First of all, are those typically younger people? Or do you see people who are first offenders who are, 40, 50 years old?
Yes, there's a diverse group of offenders. I actually remember one offender that he was married for 20 years. Never, never had an argument with his wife, but he had just one drink
Mm,
and he lost it.
wow.
And and sometimes most of my experience from domestic violence, alcohol or drugs are also related to the person,
Mm-hmm.
because when you don't if, and I asked them, and one of the questions that I asked, do you think that is alcohol or drugs were not present at the moment that you had that
Offense.
interaction with the person, would you make the same decision? And they actually told me no, I would make another decision. But sadly, alcohol and drugs, opiates, all that has a big play within the domestic violence and from the perpetrator side.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Um, you know, I find that in so many things that are wrong in everything that's wrong in this world, in relationships, whether they're intimate relationships or families or friendships or even nations, if we just stuck to the principles that God had outlined in the Bible, a lot of those things would be avoided, even in a sinful world, because we are, you know, commanded. It doesn't feel like a suggestion to me that we stay away from alcohol and drugs. The principles there are aligned in the Bible, and nothing good, nothing good comes from using mind altering drugs. Like you can't say one good thing that comes from drinking alcohol or using drugs or opiates and all of that stuff. And there's so many bad things that come from it. So I'm not surprised by that, but it's interesting to me that someone who never had any abuse in their history after 20 years can use some alcohol and then, hit their wife or whatever they did.
And so in this curriculum that I have, we also dedicate a whole chapter on. I kind of renamed it, and I called it addictions,
Mm-hmm.
because not only drugs and alcohol, and I name it that way because an addiction is something that actually takes control of you, of
Mm-hmm.
your normal life.
Right.
It
Right.
could be gambling.
Mm-hmm.
Gambling. It doesn't have to be drugs. It could be sometimes, believe it or not, I know marriages that they argue because of the cell phone, because of Facebook.
Mm.
You
Wow.
know, sometimes people put social media
Mm-hmm.
before the relationship. They wake up with social media
Right.
and they
Right.
go to bed with social media.
Right.
Now, I understand if you're running a business, you know, there are some alibi there is you running a business and you need social media because that's part of your income, that's part of what you do is
Right.
understandable.
There's
But
still a limit. There's still a
yes,
limit.
it should be a limit.
Right.
Maybe down the road, I will share a personal experience when we tackle communication with my own family. And I
Okay.
was it was surprising. I said, wow,
Mm-hmm.
how social media have gone to control our lives.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So addictions is one of the lessons. What's another lesson that you all
So we start with the every on every session we start with the power and control wheel that I think I did share with you
okay,
on,
let me
on a
share that
slide.
now.
And then we also on our second chapter we talk about parenting.
Okay. You want to
Um,
talk about the slide and tell us what
yes, yes, sure. So in recognizing the signs of domestic abuse, most of the domestic abuse is right there in the circle is power and it also control,
Mhm.
either from the female perspective, from the male perspective, from the perpetrator perspective, if you want to look at it that way. Someone wants to have control over someone. Now there are some behaviors there, and I'm gonna mention them one by one, but then we're gonna unpack
Okay.
them. Also, you have emotional abuse, you have economic abuse, sexual abuse, using children, threats, using your believe it or not, citizenship, um,
Mm. Mm.
privilege. You see those behaviors a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And the Latino or maybe immigrants, hey, if you don't do what I say, I'm gonna call the popo on you.
Mm-hmm.
So they could arrest you,
Right.
um intimidation, isolation. But let's look at one. Let's start with emotional abuse. Emotional abuse is considered you lie about her immigration status, writing to the family, um, lies about each other, calling them racist name. And
Mm-hmm.
one that I hear a lot is that, and it goes both ways, females or males. Oh, you just like your father or like your mother, alcoholic. The last thing that a person needs to hear, remind them of their trauma past.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
Because
Yeah.
even from the perpetrator side, when somebody from the perpetrator side, they have passed through something. There is something that they're hiding. And remember, behaviors are learned.
Mm-hmm.
And I always ask a question. What is anger? Is anger can be learned or can be unlearned? And every behavior, even though we learn it, but it can be unlearned.
Mm-hmm.
And that I think that's what we have to, as Christians, that's what we have to get, because the perpetrator saw that behavior from he was little. Maybe his father used to hit his mom. Maybe
Right.
his father or his mother was alcoholic. So he learned that from somewhere,
Mm-hmm.
uncle and aunt. Maybe he didn't, some of them, they didn't been raised without no father figure or
Right.
without no mother figure. I had a young lady in my group, and I remember it always stuck on me. When I first started my session, she looked at me and I think she saw like the worst thing in life. And she was mad. And she would look at me like I was the worst thing that happened to her.
Mm-hmm.
In one of the sessions, I asked the whole group, I asked, what is the characteristics of a male or of a father? She blasts up to me and tells me, you tell me what is a man, because I don't know what is a man. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't had no father in my life. I was raped when I was 13. I got married and my husband cheated on me twice.
Mm-hmm.
I remarried and I got cheated again. So can you tell me what's a man? Because I don't know. I really don't know. She was broken.
Mm-hmm.
But remember, that's what she learned. So she grew up with no father figure.
Right.
He grew up in abuse. So all the men that she unconsciously was dating was guy that they were no good, because how she had a low self-esteem, because she would say, as I look for a man that is educated, that is nice, I don't deserve that.
Mm-hmm. So
And
was she in your program as
yes,
she was abusive to her children or
well,
her
she
boyfriend or husband?
she was she when the charges got brought, they arrested both because they
Okay.
were in the fight.
There was fighting.
She
Okay.
was hitting him and he was hitting her. So just the cops, they, in some states, when there is a domestic violence, and
Mhm.
they arrest both and they press charges to both, because it
Yeah.
was both sides. um but you see that, people are broken. But I in every behavior, you have to tackle the past.
Okay.
There is a reason why they react that, and because they learn
Mm-hmm.
that's the environment where they grew up. So you have all this emotional abuse and all this going on, but also you have the economic abuse too. And
Mm-hmm.
believe it or not, I not maybe like 10 years ago, I was talking to this female, and she said, when my husband comes, he has to give me all his check. I control, and this was a female, and said he has to, and I give him enough money for the week, and that's it. I'm controlling the money.
So was she in your program
Well, no,
or
she was not.
just someone you were talking to?
Yeah, yes, yes, she was
Okay.
not in the program. But you see, all
But
this is about
can I
power.
interject? Can I interject?
Yes.
So we want to make a distinction between maybe he's not good at running the money and he'll spend it all up. And she's like, that's why he has to bring it to me. I give him what he needs so that we can take care of the home, versus there's some sort of control or power dynamic that happens there, you know?
And you're right. It can go both ways. But when a guy, when she told me a little bit more, so when the guy doesn't even have enough money for lunch, there's a problem there, because guys, when I'm hungry, I'm hungry.
Okay.
So but
So,
you see that both ways, the economic abuse.
so let me ask you a question about that. When we're talking about these different types of abuse, physical abuse obviously is obvious, and sexual abuse is can be obvious too, but not always as much. People aren't sent to your program unless they do something obvious, like there's a physical abuse that happens and or sexual abuse. Is that right? Or is it just physical?
It goes both. It could be breach of peace. In today's world, and let me explain you. In today's world, let's say you live in an apartment complex, and you are arguing with
Okay.
your partner, just an argument. There's no physical, there's no nothing, but you raise your voice. Your neighbor, on the other hand, hears that, he calls 911. There's no abuse there. There's no physical, but the person decided to call 911 because he had heard maybe several times the argument.
Okay.
Police comes. Once they come, they have to make an arrest, because if the police doesn't do anything and something happens later on and the officer did not press charges, and then the police department is liable. So every time there is a domestic abuse in most states, they have to make an arrest.
Okay.
And that was a person that was not in the room, that was just, he heard something. We had guys and girls in our program that the mother-in-law called. And we gotta love mother-in-laws, but man, some mother-in-laws, man, they're too much. So you got all this kind of charges, that it does not have to be an emotional abuse, a sexual abuse. It's just somebody that called.
So
This is the world that we live.
they actually would get sent to the program or
Yes.
something like that. Okay.
Yeah,
So
they could, because yeah, they could be sent to the program, but it depends on the probation. So let's say you had an argument, but you already has a past history.
okay.
Or maybe you had a drug charge, something with the law. It rings the bell to the police department, and I say, even though you didn't abuse, you didn't hit her, but you have prior charges, and from maybe 5 years ago, we're gonna send you to this program.
Okay.
Just in case.
So let's talk about, I want to jump back into the curriculum. And maybe some more, what I would say, classic cases of abuse. The percentages are typically, I mean, there are more men in your program than there are women, obviously.
Yes.
And for people who are coming because they actually did something abusive that was recorded, could be seen and noted, press charges were pressed, it wasn't just an argument. What are the things that maybe are common in their life, other than we talked about addiction or at least some use of alcohol or drugs in the moment? You said fatherlessness is often one of, what is some other things that you see that are common in the lives of people who are repeated offenders, not just circumstantial, or maybe it was an argument and maybe something like that?
Some of the repeated offenders that I had seen is because attitude. They don't, most of the guys don't control their anger.
Okay.
And there are so many situations
Mm-hmm.
where there is something, and something that I want to talk about
Okay.
is the protective order. When there is a protective order in place, they must obey that protective order, even though it may not make sense. A protective order can give you guys jail time. And I remember a case where the guy had a protective order, but he got out of prison, and the first thing that he did was visit his ex-wife.
Mm-hmm.
But the reason that he wanted to see his ex-wife is because he had kids with her.
Okay.
She remarried, but he wanted to see his kids. When he knocked on the door, the gentleman that was with her opened the door and he said, "I'm so and so. I would like to see my kids." He didn't did nothing else. A phone call to the police department got him arrested because he violated the protective order, even though he didn't did anything, but just because he went there, he violated.
Okay.
So there's pros, and the guy took the program, so they
Mm-hmm.
send him again to take the program.
Okay.
But you see different cases, and that's where maybe your title of today may maybe bring a light. Do we give a person a second chance? A guy like that all he wants to do is see his kids, and he understands that she remarried and all that.
Mm-hmm.
But do we give them a second chance? Most of the damage when it comes to violence, the most damaging people that are is children.
So you talked about addiction and you talked about some other things. What is another lesson that you're teaching? Because obviously, when people are coming there and they have been abusive, and we certainly, the reason that I chose that title is because it's a question that we should be asking. And in a situation like you said, you know, this person is trying to see their children. On the one hand, we can say, oh yeah, that's understandable or appreciative, but there wouldn't be a protective order if he hadn't done something to her. If he hadn't violated her in some way that allowed the court to give her a protective order. And so balancing empathy for the victim and the perpetrator who may be trying to change is kind of where we are. And so I want to talk about what you all are teaching them or lessons that you're bringing to them to help them make those changes.
Mm-hmm. And another one that we also talk about is communication. Most of the problems
Mm-hmm.
in relationship, maybe a third or maybe, you know, within that category, communication plays a big role in relationship.
Mm-hmm.
um Having and there's we actually divided in like communication. We take almost 2 weeks on talking about that, the different behaviors in communication and the different styles of communication. You could be assertive in talking, but you also can be a person that is passive. You got pass and you got passive aggressive um behaviors,
Mm-hmm.
and and then you got the aggressive behavior. You know, all these styles of communication, there are nothing wrong with them, but you also want to lean into having a more assertive communication. And I always use this example. You could use passive aggressive behavior and talking not a little bit about outside relationship, but you know, sometimes when you're shopping for a car, you
Mm-hmm.
go to a dealer and you got these salesmen that they come with you aggressive. They want to sell you a car no matter no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
But you say, listen, I want a payment that I want to be at. I got a budget that I want to be at. And if you can please me in this demand, I'm going to another place.
Mm-hmm.
I use passive aggressive, but there is a time and a place when you could use in a relationship where you could use when you could use aggressive, when you could use passive, and when you could use assertive.
Mm-hmm.
But don't get stuck too much in passive or in aggressive. A passive person, and we categorize this, a passive person is a person that they don't want to offend nobody. They hold so much inside, but they are more dangerous than the atomic bomb. Why? Because they hold inside, and when they explode, they are out of control
Mm-hmm.
because all what they hold inside. So I always teach in my classes, it's okay to speak up. If there's something bothering you in the relationship, address it, talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
Look for the time and place also when you could address it. I tell my guys and girls, never, never ever bring an argument inside the house until you know all the skills necessary if you are prepared. If
Okay.
you don't like something, okay, maybe go to a restaurant, go to a park, go to a mall. And this is why, because you know that there's cameras out there. The cameras are gonna work on your defense, or they're gonna put you
Prosecute you.
on behind the bars.
Mm-hmm.
But you know that you have to control yourself. The problem arguing in the house is the first from my experience, the first thing that comes in somebody's mouth. I pay the bills here. What you talking about? I do this in the house. I do that. And the argument starts concentrating on power, not on the problem.
Mm.
But when you bring the problem outside the house and start talking about it, you know that that is you raise your voice, somebody's going to call the cops or somebody's going to look at you bad. So now you concentrate on the problem and not on your authority.
Okay. And has that been effective for the people that you have shared that with in that time when they're learning how to just
It
have
it
conversations? And
it works. It's not going to work 100%. And I always tell them that, listen, maybe your first try it's not going to work. Maybe they're going to say, why are you taking me to this restaurant? Why are you doing this? Or why are you taking me to the mall? Because there's something that they never done before. And the person think that is a trap. You setting me up for something. But I say it may not work the first time, but keep on doing it, keep on doing it, keep on talking. Once you know how to control your emotions, and then if you have an argument, you could actually do it in the house, but concentrate on the problem, not on your authority.
okay, I love that. I love that. I mean,
Mhm.
I mean, that bit of advice can be used for people who are not in abusive relationships, but who just don't know how to effectively discuss the problem and it becomes an argument. There may not be any violence, but nevertheless, the problem doesn't get resolved.
And then
So,
with
okay, go
and
ahead.
then with that, I'll give him two exercise. And believe it or not, you may laugh of this one, but it works. It works.
Okay.
And I say, okay, you have an argument, because some people don't know how to argue because they always want to win.
Mm-hmm.
I tell them, okay, use the text. If you have a discomfort, maybe text the person, because maybe you express yourself writing or whatever. But let's try a little exercise. I tell them, and you remember about Power Rangers. Maybe you got people on your group that are young, not as old as me. But I remember Power Rangers, and they used to say, well, with the power of this, with the power of that, or this. So I tell them, listen, now you're gonna put fists to that partner, but it has to be a verbal compromise and something legit. Whenever you start arguing, you're gonna tell that person, deactivate, deactivate, and you guys are gonna stop arguing, and you're gonna go to separate rooms. You're gonna do your thing, and whenever you cool down, that you think that you're ready to say, and then you come back and you thumb fist up and you say, activate. Let's talk about this.
Okay. All right.
But remember, but I got a rule. Deactivate, and the deactivate has to be followed with a hug or a kiss.
Ah.
So when you deactivate, even though you're mad with that person,
Mm-hmm.
you're gonna give a hug or you're gonna give a kiss, and you're gonna go separate rooms. When you activate, you're gonna come back with a hug, and you're gonna come back with a kiss. And now we're gonna talk about the problem. You don't know how powerful that is.
I have an idea
Yes.
that's similar. There's John Gottman, who is well known for his study on relationships and conflict in relationships, talks about the fact that he could tell, I think he had like almost perfect record of being able to observe couples in conflict and tell if they were going to end up divorcing or not. And one of the signs that they would not divorce, even though they were having conflict, and that their conflict was just normal and healthy, is that they would, at some point, even in the conflict, they would laugh about something, they would touch each other or reach for each other. There was demonstrated intimacy even in the middle of the conflict. And for those who didn't have any of that, there was contempt, and there was just like, rejection of the person. There was no, that he predicted that they would be divorced, and he was right 97% of the time when he was observing these couples. So that's actually a cool a cool little trick there. I like that. That.
And I have a coworker that what she does with her husband, she brought a little, you know how we talk about addressing the elephant in the room?
Mm-hmm.
So she brought a little pink elephant. And let's say that her and her husband, maybe is his time to do the dishes, but he forgot. On purpose, because we men, sometimes
y'all remember statistics from 1969,
yeah,
but you can't
we
remember
forget.
washing dishes.
Especially me, after the COVID, I lost memory and stuff like that. So sometimes I forget stuff with my wife. So what she does is that, because she recognizes that she has a temper, so she puts the elephant on the problem. And he knows that when he comes from work, the elephant is on the dishes, where he had it to do the dishes, but he didn't. Or sometimes he leaves the socks in the middle of the room. I'm telling you. And she puts that elephant there. But she also told me that sometimes the elephant gets lost. That she can't find the elephant. But it's a cute exercise. You don't argue with the person.
Right.
If you know that you have a temper, or you know that sometimes your words are not the best, so you put that little elephant on the problem and let the elephant handle the situation.
I love that. Okay, so we're coming down to the end of our time. So I don't know if you know anything about trauma bonding. I just watched a podcast about this.
Can she be more specific when she said trauma bonding? What exactly?
Well, just if you came in late, he's not a therapist, so this might be beyond our scope. But trauma bonding is really on a very simple level about my trauma and your trauma, whoever I'm in relationship with, almost being attracted to each other. And we stay in relationships that kind of feed off of that, even though we recognize that that's unhealthy. But because I'm comfortable here and you're comfortable there, we know, then we stay. But the second part of the question, and maybe we'll bring the therapist back. Maybe Dee will come and talk more in detail about that. Thank you, classy teacher Diva, for that question. But I want to talk about the second part, because I think you will have more, answers around this. No contact despite the abuser's alleged change behavior.
When one of my talking about, now I'm a little bit thank you for Lorraine for the clarification. But recognizing the signs, one of the things that we address, we also address a little bit about the trauma. And the best example that I can talk about, in today's world, there's something that we lost from the past. And I remember well, there used to be a stage in relationship where we used to date, and we used to date and know the person. That has been lost. You know a person, and even in Christians relationship, you know the person, 5 days later you're having sex with the person. It's real.
Mhm.
You lost, you went from the dating part, got lost. So you don't see the package. And
Mhm.
some of the people that you elect in your life, there's some trauma, there's a package that they have not unpacked,
Right.
and it's still there, and you have to talk about it. And then in relationships, you lost that stage. Now you're having sex with this person. Now this person is pregnant, and then you say, "Oh my God, what did I did? This woman or this guy, man, now I know who they are."
Mhm.
But we never took time to even know that person. And it's so beautiful about dating. When I hope my wife is not here, but I remember when I started dating my wife, I started observing her, how she treated her family, how she treated her daughters, how she treated people, because there was not no difference than in years to come, as I elected to
Mhm.
to be with her. If she treated her family like crap, there's no way that she's gonna treat me like crap too in years to come. No matter how handsome I look, how charming I look, she's gonna treat me like crap.
Mhm.
And we have to be very observant at how the other person is, what trauma that that person has. Um, there's a study where this couple, after Lorraine, how much time we got? Because I know that you said that.
A couple more minutes. I'll
Okay,
give
and
you
you
some.
know that I like to talk.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna be quick, like Speedy Gonzalez. So this couple, there was a study. After 20 years, the guy wants a divorce.
Mhm.
So the counselor said, why you want a divorce? And I said, well, sex is not the same. She's not the same anymore in bed and all that kind of stuff. We haven't, have any intimate relationship in 6 months, and I'm tired of this. In the middle of the session, it was discovered that the reason that she was like that is because there was a certain behavior that he used to do while they were intimate in the intimacy, that reminded her
Mm.
when she was raped at 14 years old.
Mm.
But he never knew
Mhm.
about this trauma.
Mhm.
What happened there? 20 years, people. 20 years. There was no communication. There was no trust,
Mhm.
because she probably didn't trust to tell him what happened to her. He didn't understand her. So there is traumas that people come, and you have to talk about that.
Mhm.
Another topic that I didn't mention that affect the relationship is finance. Some people don't know how to manage their money. And when we dedicate a day to talk about finance, because it is important that we establish our finance when we're going to be with the other person. Does the other person spends a lot of money? What are your goals? What are your things? Maybe this person is a saver, but this that person is not. I
Mhm.
have to say that I and I'm still getting there. I was reckless when I met my wife. My wife is very on point with finance. So what I every time I have a discussion, about my bills and stuff, I go to her, because
Mhm.
she's my partner, and but we have to in relationship, we have to each other recognize our weakness and our strong parts and
Mhm.
share that conversation. I want to end with Proverbs 16:24. Words are like honey. They are easy to accept and good for the health. People, be careful of how you express yourself with your partner and with your people around you.
Mhm.
Our words matter, how we say things to our partner. Much love for you guys.
Thank you very much, Edgar. I really appreciate it. And in the chat, if you can just give them a clap, and we appreciate that. And I think that as we close here, we want to thank you for just bringing a different perspective, and also I think that recognizing, remembering that the people who are abusers have, most of the time, they have some addiction, they have experienced abuse often, whether it's directly to them or in their home as a child, and so they were repeating behaviors that they learned from somewhere. Doesn't make it right. People still think people should be incarcerated if they need to be incarcerated, but that doesn't mean that they can't also have empathy, that we also can't give second chances within the reason around that. If someone has changed and recovered and repented and turned away and proven themselves to learn how to manage their anger, deal with their hurt, their trauma, then you don't have to give them a second chance in the relationship. I'm talking about in life. So you don't have to go back to them. That's not what we're advocating. But what we're saying is for us as people, as Christians, as a church, to look at people, to support them in their change and repentance and turning away from those types of those harmful, criminal, hurtful behaviors, rather than just leaving them out and saying, well, you did this thing, you're no good anymore, and there's nothing that can be done. So thank you for sharing with us just a little bit today. We really appreciate it. And we hope that this has been a blessing. So as we close here, I do want to just kind of touch a little bit on that question that was asked as well. Going no contact despite the abuser's alleged change behavior. And there was a follow-up that I do want to show. By trauma bonding, I mean that you know what you experienced that made you feel bad, and you know the person is not good for you, but you still miss certain aspects of the relationship. And what I would say about that is, I think that there's no relationship that any of us has ever been in where it was 100% bad. And so very often, particularly with women, once there's been some separation, like you might leave the relationship because of an abusive situation, or you might leave for some other reason that is detrimental to you, and you get some distance and you also get some loneliness, suddenly all you can remember is the good stuff. All you can remember is the romance. All you can remember are the flowers. All you can remember are the laughs. And you block out the reality of the trauma bond, if you will, the bad experience that you have that was 80% bad and 20% good versus the flip. And now we go back and we see this repeated over and over again. And in fact, we didn't mentioned this with Edgar, but he gave me a link. There's a link in the description of a woman doing a TED talk about why do domestic violence victims stay. So I would recommend that you all watch that. But this is kind of part of that link. There are a lot of reasons. Some of them are financial. Some of them are trauma bonding. There are other reasons that, you know, sometimes you're married and sometimes the church supports those kinds of things. Like, you should be a Christian and you can't divorce and you shouldn't leave this person and you should just forgive. And that's a distorted picture of what the Bible has to say about this as well. Forgiving does not mean staying in the relationship. But I don't want to go on a whole tangent because we need to wrap this up. But that is my response regarding, just a brief response regarding your question. Thank you for asking that. But even though you miss some of the good parts of the relationship, it doesn't mean that you actually miss the person. And so take what you've learned, take what was good, and go find someone who has not just that, but all the other aspects that you need. Someone who's safe, someone is healthy, someone is healed, and someone who treats you like the daughter of God that you are. Our scripture for today, 1 John 1:9, if we confess our sin, he is faithful and just to forgive us our sin and cleanse us from all unrighteousness. There are a lot of scriptures that I could have picked, but this is the one that I chose because at the end of the day, whatever we've done, whoever we've been, God says if we come to him with confession, that he is always going to be faithful, not just to forgive us, but to cleanse us. And that's really what we need. After forgiveness, we can always go back to sin. But when he cleanses us, when we surrender to his cleansing, then our tendencies toward violence or anything else, addiction, or just being mean, can be washed away and cleansed through his blood. Thank you for joining us. Just for a little taste, I hope that you can start to see this from a different perspective, a holistic perspective. We still want domestic violence victims to be safe. They're still in. I apologize because we should have a link that you can, if you are experiencing this, that you can reach out to someone. And I apologize because I forgot to put that, because we still want you to be safe. We want you to talk to someone to get help. There are shelters, there are hotlines all over the world that you can call if you need help with this. So next week on the Live, Love, and Marry Wiser, my brother Hayden will be back and we'll be talking about the Passport Brothers, which we didn't get to talk about the last time, but we're going to have a whole conversation about the Passport Brothers. So I hope that you, if you don't know what that is, you might want to look it up because it's interesting, but I hope that you will join us live. Be in the comments, ask questions. Thank you, classy teacher, Diva, for asking us that question. You all are welcome always to ask questions. Please hit the like button. Please subscribe so that we can get the word out and share this with other people who need to hear it. So if you, again, want to be part of our book launch team, support at asinglemission.com. Just email us and say, I want to be a part, or just hit launch, say launch team. We're going to give you details on that probably next week or the week after. We are coming down to the end of our season, and we have such a great ending to the season, you all. I'm going to just tell you about it right now. After next week, we're going to have 3 episodes with married couples. The first episode is going to be the husbands. That will be December 5th. We're going to have 3 husbands. One of them is the husband of one of the hosts. And then the next week, we're going to have the wives. And then we're going to have a special Friday evening session. It's going to be our last session for the season and the year. It's going to be on December the 15th, a Friday evening, 2-hour or whatever. It's going to be a longer one because you all are done with work and you can just relax. Special, where we're going to have the couples together and we're going to talk about marriage. We're going to talk about sex. We're going to talk about love. We're going to talk about how to find the right person. We're going to talk about what men want, what women want and what God wants. We're going to talk, and you can throw your questions in there as well. It's going to be great. So I am looking forward to this. I know the couples. I'm excited to have them, and I know that you will be too. So until next time, make choices that will help you live, love, and marry wiser. God bless you.